5 years in, what are our biggest homestead regrets so far? Today I'm going to share with you the top 10 things that we would totally change if we were to redo and rebuild a homestead. Be sure to hang around to the end to check out my very biggest regret. Number 10. I built my vegetable garden too small. Partly because we had less kids when we moved here. It was the biggest garden I've ever had, so I thought it was big enough. But since then, we've had to expand it down the bank and add what we call the survival garden, mostly because I plant things there and just hope they survive because they largely get neglected. And around there is where we grow our bigger crops that need that little bit extra space. If you've got anything that you would like to change at your homestead, tell us about it in the comments below. It is best that we learn from each other's mistakes. Number 9 is that the animal sheds are down there and my veggie garden is up here. That means every time I want to clean out the animals and bring their compost up to the garden, I'm having to literally push it uphill. Number 8, my big regret is not looking after my fruit trees properly. I grafted a whole lot of fruit trees and then they suffered from sheer and total utter neglect. A little bit on purpose just to see which ones would survive, but also because I just didn't have time to look after them. And I have seen the difference of the ones that I have planted and then I have cared for and cut the grass down around and I've mulched around them and I've fed them. They have grown so much better than the ones that I just ignored. To be honest, some of the ones I ignored are barely any bigger than they were when I planted them 3 or 4 years ago. Number 7 is having to buy in feed and hay. Our property is on a really steep hill, and as such it means that we don't have anywhere that we can have as a hay paddock. Number 6, we have somewhat remedied, but we did not originally plan for any feed storage area. So we have kind of filled in like a little nook that we were going to use as a slaughter area, and we've decided to turn that into somewhere to store the hay. The one upside to not having anywhere to put our feed is that we have put them in bins right next to the animals that need it. Number 5 is we didn't put in enough drainage. We have got one big drainage trench that captures the runoff from the driveway and it takes it down past the animal sheds and into the paddock. What it doesn't do is capture what comes off our backyard. Number 4 is definitely not animal proofing the front fence properly. We have had problems with ducks escaping out onto the road. Our piglets came home and ran straight out onto the road. And just the other week, we were leaving the house, of course, the day we were running late. And who was on the road but our lambs? The baby goat and the lambs that we have been bottle feeding decided just to walk straight on through the fence and they were out on the road. And unfortunately, because they were friendly, they came running towards us, not away from us, which made herding them so much more frustrating. So we have since remedied that. We have put chicken wire right along our whole front fence so that even the piglets and the ducks can't get through. My number 3 biggest regret was buying a cow, and to be honest, I didn't hate the cow. The cow was wonderful and I love the idea of having a cow and I would love to have a dairy cow another day, but we just weren't set up for it and she pugged up the ground something horrific. And then we weren't able to get a bull here because there was like an outbreak of some disease in the entire country, so everyone got super anxious about shearing animals and shearing cows. We couldn't get her bred. I didn't realize how expensive AI was if you didn't have another cow to be able to tell when they were on standing heat, which meant that it was going to have to be like $600 I think for the full hormonal process, and all in all it just didn't work out, unfortunately. My number 2 regret, we started out with only electric fencing. As soon as the electric fence is off, they seem to know it and they were like, they'd knock it over or a tree would fall on it, or there was just so much more maintenance involved in running just an electric fence. Since we have put up some permanent fencing, life has been much easier. And actually, my number 1 biggest regret about Fantail Valley as a farm is the fact that we bought such a steep hill. If we were to do homesteading again, it would definitely be on flatter land. We have plans here. We're going to terrace some of the hillside and get some of the gorse cleared, but I think my dreams have got so big, we're limited by what we have. When we first moved here, we were just looking for a 1/4 acre that we could do what we were already doing in town and just have 12 chickens and a bit of a vegetable garden. But I think we've bought into the homestead lifestyle so much more and we want to provide for ourselves so much more. Don't want it to be discouraging. I mean, we all learn by mistakes and sometimes you can only do what you can do with what you've got at the time. If I could have afforded to get someone in to put permanent fencing in right at the beginning, we would have done that, but we didn't have that ability, and so because of that we had the electric fence and we just had to deal with it until we had the ability to put in some permanent fencing. It is what it is, and it's all part of life, and it's all part of learning, and it's part of our journey. And I encourage you to really put the effort and the time and the thought into planning your homestead. If you are just looking for land, really think it through and make sure you're dreaming big enough. Make sure what you're buying has enough space for what you dream now, but also what you're probably going to dream and what you're going to want in the future as well. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, hit the like button and check out some of these other videos that you might also find helpful.